This week we saw swim brand Rip Curl join the ranks of companies who choose transgender women, aka biological men, to represent their brand instead of women. Now, whether it's a brand deal or fairness in sporting competition, women feel that they are either being replaced or destined to give up their podiums to men. Now, I've heard it said by critics that these self-ID laws are all about fairness and equality. Rachael, is it fair to be inclusive of men in women's spaces, or does society need to set some boundaries?
Firstly, that story with Rip Curl was just crazy. It was just, especially given that Rip Curl had just parted ways with female surfer Bethany Hamilton, who had been speaking out against the unfairness of males competing in women's surfing and in women's sport more generally. To then go and replace her with a male who identifies as a woman was just a real slap in the face to women. But in response to your question about whether or not we need to be inclusive of men and women's spaces or whether we need to set boundaries, I think our society has actually already drawn those lines and made those decisions. So if we look at our current society, we already have single-sex spaces and services for males and for females. We have single-sex, bathrooms, prisons. We have single-sex sporting teams and events. But what this particular bill or self-ID or gender ideology more broadly is trying to do is it's trying to sell the lie that human beings can change sex, and that therefore if a man says he's a woman, we have to treat him as a woman and allow him to access all those spaces as a woman. So again, I think as a society we've drawn those boundaries, but this particular ideology is coming in and turning it all on its head with its sort of irrational assumptions.
Well, your petition against this bill has amassed 12,000 signatures despite silence from the mainstream press and quite a lot of feminist groups. You've addressed this to Premier Chris Minns, the Attorney General Michael Daly, the Minister for Women Jodie Harrison and Parliament at large. Have you had any response from these ministers or any indication, at all that you are being taken seriously and your concerns for women are being taken seriously?
So I haven't heard, I've actually written to every single politician individually in the New South Wales Parliament, and obviously the petition, as you say, is addressed to those three key government members and the rest of the New South Wales Parliament. I haven't heard specifically from those three members. I have met and spoke to MPs from across the political spectrum, all of whom have concerns about the self-ID aspect of the bill and other aspects as well. But in terms of actual consultation being done by Greenwich or by the government with women's groups sort of face-to-face, there doesn't seem like there's a lot of that being done overall. And the reality is, even if there's sort of, a few people here and there who are willing to directly say to me that they're concerned, if the Labor government supports this, particularly in the Legislative Assembly next week, it will go through because they've got the vast majority in that House. It will be a bit closer in Legislative Council, but unless the Liberals actually vote as a bloc against this bill, like they did in Queensland against the self-ID law in particular, then there's a very, very high chance it'll go through there as well. And my understanding is that Labor is quite supportive of the self-ID aspect anyway, and also the surrogacy aspect of the bill. So people can say all they like that, the Labor government sort of has to do this to appease Greenwich, but I think, unfortunately, a lot of the reforms that he's proposed are actually in line with their values as well.